Be live.
What's up, guys? I'm so sorry I got us kicked off of Facebook. It's all my fault.
I was going to blame it on Troy because nobody really wants to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. But, if you want to take the blame, it's okay with me.
I mean, it was my fault. I'll man up.
All right, let's see if we can get this going on Facebook. And if we can, we'll start talking about everything again because we've tried this about 3 or 4 times already, and it has been a pain in the butt. My God, I think we're okay. All right, so I need to share back to the places. I've only got 2 that, that I had previously. My own personal page, and then I shared it to, if you are a member of Average Joe's Sports Group, you'll be able to start watching us again. And if you are a member of Football Unleashed,
If you guys want to be the best ever, if you guys want to help us share to your groups or your Facebook, please do. Save us some time.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
so
I broke
those. I just need to tag some people real quick. Because we don't want people to miss the show here. We've got a mistake. It happens. And so I guess this is a good time. Make sure I can share my screen. This is a good time right here. I need to be able to share my screen. Let me find it.
There you go.
Hang on. I'm going to go right here because we are about to do, I believe it's the 8th pick in the draft. And so if you are just joining us on the podcast, you should know who the first 5 picks were. You might like that. If you missed the early part of the broadcast, Bryce Young of Alabama went to the Carolina Panthers. That pick was made by Steve Kearns. Will Anderson Jr., the edge rusher out of Alabama, went to Houston. That was made by Robert Ross. The Indianapolis Colts traded from number 4 to number 3, thanks to Megan Barr, the fan of the Arizona Cardinals, Jesse Stickle, the fan of the Indianapolis Colts, and C.J. Stroud went number 3, the quarterback at Ohio State, to the Colts. Tyree Wilson was selected by the Arizona Cardinals, the edge rusher from Texas Tech, and Jalen Carter was picked up at number 5 by Stephanie Freese-Sladek and her son Liam. Jalen Carter, of course, the defensive lineman with the red flags out of Georgia. That was the first 5 picks here of our draft, of the mock draft. And that brings us to, of course, we are at the Atlanta Falcons. And the Atlanta Falcons have the 8th pick in the draft. The pick is going to be made by Troy Strong. And so let's get right with it here and go to the Atlanta Falcons with the 8th overall pick. And this is the one reach that I saw in our draft. He goes for Keanu Benton, the defensive lineman out of Wisconsin. Now, I have a little information about Keanu, and that is that he is a mauling defensive tackle, and that he had 6 sacks last year. And for defensive tackle, playing in the Big Ten, that's pretty good. 6 sacks from the middle. And so, Atlanta goes here. What do you think, Chris?
I think this is a little bit of a reach, if you ask me. But I mean, they need defense. So maybe they know more than me in this one. I mean, the kid is a solid kid. There's no denying that. He's a good player. And he's definitely going to help beef. He's definitely going to beef up that defensive line. I'm not going to sit here and say that this kid's a bust or not a good player, because he is. I just didn't see him going number 8, but he's off the board and he's going to Atlanta.
Okay, and that means that we're going to the next team that is on the board here. I'm getting behind on my stuff. We're going to the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears are being drafted by Mr. Joe Hansen. Tim Johansson is our Chicago Bear fan here in Wichita, Kansas. He has coached middle and high school wrestling and football for ages. He's a legend in this part of the country. And so the Chicago Bears, with their selection, if I can get it here real quick. And I think he went the smart route here, knowing what he needs for his team, and that is they need help on the offensive line to help protect Justin Fields. And so with the 9th overall pick, the Chicago Bears select Peter Skoronsky out of Northwestern, the offensive lineman, Chris.
They need offensive linemen in Chicago, so I have to say, give that guy some credit, and that was a great pick because that's what Chicago needs, his own linemen.
According to this, he allowed only 3 sacks in the last 24 games. He is a solid left tackle. He's got a lot of experience over the last 3 years at Northwestern, playing in the Big Ten. They played in a lot of big games against some of the premier pass rushers that we're going to see in not only this draft, but next year as well. And so Peter Skoronsky, offensive line, goes to Chicago. And that means that the next team that is on the clock is the Philadelphia Eagles, the NFC champions. Chris, tell us about the Philadelphia Eagles. We know they've lost a lot of players in free agency.
There's a rumor floating around, and I don't think we covered it, that Mr. Henry could be moved there real soon. Supposedly they're in talks and talking. But they need to beef back up if they want to get back to where they were last year. They lost some players. I'm waiting to see if more drama's coming out because we've seen who they hired this week, Matt Patricia. And I'm pretty sure Slay right now is probably kicking himself in the butt for signing that contract extension and staying there because now he's stuck with Matty P again. So I'm waiting to see exactly what moves they make and see what plans out here in this week.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I just think that it is I think that Philadelphia could go anywhere. Early on, this week I heard that maybe they would spring for a running back this early in the draft. Bijan Robinson out of Texas. I think that they have the wide receivers that they need on this team, but their defense took a huge hit here in this offseason with free agency defections. Of course, their salary cap is going to be under fire now that they paid the big bucks there to Jalen Hurts. And so, we get to the 10th overall pick in the draft. The Philadelphia Eagles, your NFC champions, select.
Hey, if you can pull.
If this thing will go. No technical difficulties. Come on now. Tisha Warner selects for the Philadelphia Eagles cornerback Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. And, I look at this pick, and it does a couple of things. First of all, it keeps Joey Porter Jr. in the state of Pennsylvania, but also prevents the Pittsburgh Steelers from grabbing him later on in the draft, and continuing those bloodlines there in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. He's definitely from Pittsburgh. He's a good kid too.
So here you got Joey Porter. I think he'll fit right in there. You already talked about, how they re-signed Darius Slay. You're looking at, they're bolstering their defense with this particular pick. And so 10 picks in. Let's do a quick review, especially for those that missed it earlier. because of the technical difficulties that we've had. Let me do this real quick here. The first 10 picks, or excuse me, the second 5, I should say, is what we're going to show here. We've already showed the top 5, and so now we're going to go to the second 5.
Oh, we're at 10 already? My bad.
We are at 10. Yeah, Philadelphia was 10. And so you've got, Detroit took Lucas Van Ness with the 6th pick. Anthony Richardson, of course, goes to the Raiders. Keanu Benton, which was a bit of a reach, goes to the Atlanta Falcons. Peter Skoronski, is your man there in Chicago, and Joey Porter Jr. was just taken by the Philadelphia Eagles. Any thoughts on this real quick, Chris?
It's been a heck of a draft so far. You got Anthony Richardson off the board at 7. I was wondering where he was going to go. You got Keanu Benton. I mean, it's been a heck of a draft. It's so far. So far, I didn't see the draft actually looking this way until we got here. Put it that way. There's some picks.
Yeah, there's been a few surprises so far. You had the trade. Of course, C.J. Stroud didn't go number 2. He ended up going 3, as Houston opts for defense. The Raiders look to pick up a quarterback of the future in Richardson. And then we just had Joey Porter Jr. going to Philadelphia. And so now we turn our our attention to the Tennessee Titans. The Titans had the number 1 seed in the AFC just 2 years ago and were beaten at home by the Cincinnati Bengals. They're not sold on their quarterback in Ryan Tannehill. There's been rumors all offseason that they're going to trade Derrick Henry. You spoke about that possibility, him going to Philadelphia. I think those rumors have been shot down.
Can you show the top 5 picks real quick? The first top 5?
Show the top 5 again real quick?
Yeah,
sure.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
We got a couple comments asking for it. I was trying to post it in the comments so you didn't have to, but.
Yeah, you're fine.
And the live feed won't let you do that.
Yeah.
We got that right now for you, Joey.
Our top 5 picks, and I'll be happy to show them again. We had the technical difficulty, so I'm more than happy to help everybody out here and let them know what's going on. Our top 5 picks began with Bryce Young going to the Carolina Panthers, and then like we said before, C.J. Stroud did not go to number 2. They took Will Anderson, decided to go with defense. The Colts move up 1 pick to, take C.J. Stroud. Arizona gets Tyree Wilson and then Jalen Carter to the Seattle Seahawks. And so that's the top 5 picks in our draft. We're past number 10. We're on to the Tennessee Titans. And the Tennessee Titans pick is being made by Tammy Hanshaw. Tammy is a longtime Tennessee Titan fan. And, one of my good friends here she lives in Andover, Kansas, which is where I was, grew up. And, so she has a real good beat on her team. And so with the 11th overall selection, the Tennessee Titans select wide receiver Quentin Johnston out of TCU. And so our first wide receiver comes off the board here at number 11 to Tennessee, looking to add some weapons to the team that really was kind of toothless on offense the latter part of the season, Chris.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of shocked that didn't see a quarterback because I've been reading the rumors that they're not happy with Will Levis and that they might be interested in a quarterback. I thought they might have went that route, but I guess they went receiver, which it's another need. It kind of got me.
Right. I'm screwing up here. Green Bay is not on the clock. Houston is back on the clock.
Houston's back on the clock?
Houston is back on the clock. Houston has the number 12 pick. We talked about it earlier that they did not take a quarterback. They elected to go defense. And so, what I have here, we just talked about Quentin Johnston. He had 60 catches this last year for 1,067 yards and 6 touchdowns for TCU, And so I think they may have themselves a good player here. I know he's taken visits to the Chiefs and a couple other teams that were lower in the first round. But being the first wide receiver off the board going to Tennessee, that's got to be a feather in his cap there.
Yeah. Where do you think this Texans pick goes to, David?
Well, I thought originally that they were going to go with a quarterback at this stage. Will Levis is still out there. You've got Hendon Hooker. And so, you've got Case Keenum, who's been brought back, to Houston. He led Minnesota to the NFC Championship just a few years ago. And so, I know he's a steady quarterback if you put some weapons around him, and Houston has done a lot in free agency, both offensively and defensively this offseason. I'm not real sure where they're going to go after they did not take a quarterback with their second pick. I started thinking that, maybe they won't take one at all. And so here we go. This is Robert Ross again selecting for the Houston Texans with the number 12 overall selection. And Houston's going to go with wide receiver Jackson Smith-Njigba out of Ohio State. This guy here is coming off of an injury. He did not play, a whole lot this last year because of hamstring problems. But the previous year, he was their leading receiver. He had 95 catches for 1,595 yards and 9 touchdowns for the Ohio State Buckeyes, Chris.
Great receiver. I mean, he definitely has the ability to be a breakout receiver. Again, this guy must trust Case Keenum a lot.
Well, you've got a new head coach, in D'Amico Ryans. He comes in. He is a predominantly defensive coordinator. He was a defensive player in the NFL. And, we talked about Case Keenum when he was with the Minnesota Vikings. Strong running game, good defense. I think that he thinks if he bolsters the defense, which they did with their second pick, and then he adds some weapons on offense to make it easy, little pitch and catch for Case Keenum, they can win some ball games and be in the hunt for at least a playoff spot, and then they can come back and they can pick him up a quarterback later on.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I'm not hating on the pick. He's definitely a great receiver. Definitely has the ability to be a breakout. And appreciate Brandon. How you doing, bub? He definitely has ability there, and I mean, he's going to help Case Keenum out. That's a fact.
So now, early on, before we started, the draft here, and we had our technical difficulties in the first part, we talked about Aaron Rodgers, the Green Bay Packers, and the Jets have resumed their talks going into, their trade talks going into this draft here. And so we made the decision that the New York Jets were going to trade their first round draft pick to make sure that they got Aaron Rodgers. They didn't want to fool around and risk the opportunity or chance that they were not going to get him. And so that is why the Green Bay Packers are on the clock here instead of the Jets. And for Green Bay, the Packers picks are going to be made by Chris Halamuda. He lives in the San Antonio, Texas area, but he has been a Green Bay Packer fan for a very long, long time. And he has decided that with the 13th overall selection, the Green Bay Packers select Michael Mayer the tight end out of Notre Dame. You know, they lost their guy, Robert Tonyan, here in the offseason in free agency. You know, they need more weapons to surround Jordan Love. And so I can kind of understand why they go here. They've been pretty happy with, you know, both their offense and defense of lines the last couple of years. You know, it just feels like they haven't had a whole lot of weapons. They did get Christian Watson and Romeo Dobbs this last year. Now they need a tight end to go with them. They pick up Meyer here with the 13th overall pick, Chris.
I mean, they got to trust Jordan Love, so might as well get him some weapons.
Meyer had 16 touchdowns at tight end over the last 2 years, and he had 67 receptions that averaged 12.1 yards a catch. That's big time right there for a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, you got the draft pick, you got Rodgers gone. If this is the case, why not start getting some weapons for the young kid, see what he got. I mean, you can never, that's the whole thing. I mean, you can have a decent quarterback, you know what I mean, and still do good as long as you got enough weapons around them. I like the pick. You're not going to hear me talk down.
That's going to move us. That's going to move us to the AFC East right now and the New England Patriots. The Patriots pick is going to be represented by Josh Dodd. And, you know, he was looking towards defense. And I believe that he took the best player that was on the board defensively at this point. And with the 14th pick, the New England Patriots took cornerback Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. He said it wasn't really a need, but he is the best player that was available for them. And so that's where they go at this time for New England.
That's a good pick. I mean, Witherspoon's projected. He's been talking. I mean, obviously he's been rumored to maybe even go to Detroit to us at 6. So I mean, he's actually a good prospect. I like the pick, especially they just had what's his name retire from them as well. So this could be a good replacement.
Devin Witherspoon had 3 interceptions, and the opposing quarterbacks this year had a passer rating of 25.3. If that's not a shutdown corner, I don't know what is. That's going to move us back to Green Bay. And Chris Alamuda will pick again for the Green Bay Packers here at number 15. Earlier on, they took the tight end Michael Meyer. And let's see who they're going to take at this particular point to add to their team. With the 15th overall selection, the Green Bay Packers select safety Brian Branch of Alabama.
Another Alabama player going in the first round.
Yep, Alabama players in the first round, and this here should help solidify their secondary. Branch was a tackling machine at Alabama. He was second on the team in tackles, and, you know, he is a budding star coming to the league. I watched a little bit of video on him earlier today when I was preparing for the draft and was really surprised about, you know, the way he played the game. And that's going to bring us to the Washington Commanders. Now, we need to speed up here a little bit because, you know, of our technical difficulties. We don't want to run too long. I will tell you that the Washington Commanders are looking for offensive linemen. But at this particular time in the draft, there wasn't any in the next 4 or 5 picks, according to best available players on Pro Football Focus. So Washington was looking to trade. And this pick was going to be made by Robert Ponchet. And instead of making the pick, he decided to trade. I asked a few different people, And the Washington Commanders traded their pick and moved down with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are going to be picking at this particular spot. And to be honest, I think that they were a little worried that they weren't going to get the guy that they wanted after Michael Mayer was selected. And so with the 16th selection in this NFL draft, our mock draft, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers select, if it'll let me, Dalton Kincaid, the tight end out of Utah. They had to cut Cameron Brate. They haven't had a weapon at tight end since Rob Gronkowski retired last year. And, Kyle Rudolph is over the hill. He hasn't done anything for them. So they're looking to get some more weapons, to replace some of the guys that they've had to let go or have left in free agency. So I think this is a good pick here for Tampa Bay. I have for Dalton Kincaid that he's just a weapon. Chris, what do you think?
He's one of the bigger tight ends coming up. Same with the kid from Notre Dame that was taken by Green Bay a couple picks ahead. So I didn't really expect him to stay on the board for long. They need weapons. They got Mayfield down there. They still have the rookie from last year. So why not load up on weapons? You still got Mike Evans. You still got Chris Godwin down there. So, you're not completely shot on offense side of the ball. You got they got more kinks to work out, obviously, with White and their defense with this requested trade. But, it's a great pickup. They should be able to make some noise. It'll be a good year for them.
And that moves us on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers are represented at this point by Josh Bagakius. I keep messing up his last name. I'm doing the best I can, buddy. But, he's going to select for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers, they are built on defense. They've always been built on defense. I thought their offense was really coming along here this last year. And so, they need a little bit more help on defense. And so with the 17th overall pick, they take cornerback Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. And the information I have on him is that he had 4 interceptions this year. He was one of the top corners in the Pac-12. They played some pretty good teams in their out-of-league schedule, and he shut down quite a few wide receivers this season.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping that he might be around for the 18th pick, but once again, he was snagged. He's a good cornerback. I think he got a good future in the NFL. The Steelers obviously had to replace their cornerback that came to the Lions, so why not get this guy when he's still on the board? The Steelers have always been a decent defensive team also. I'm not saying they haven't had a great offense at times, but they've been really good on defense. Pick makes sense. Good pick all around.
And that brings us back to your defensive, to your Detroit Lions are going to be back on the clock here as I do my best to navigate everything. The Detroit Lions are going to be picking here with the 18th overall selection. Earlier on, you got yourself an edge rusher. You talked about your defense, being the key to improving your team this year. But we talked about your offense being, pretty darn good. And so, with the 19th overall selection, the Detroit Lions select, if I screw this up, got yourself a defensive lineman in Collegiate Chansey from Pittsburgh. This guy here is, I have him down as having 17 sacks at defensive tackle over the last 2 years. I think that you have bolstered your defense. You got this guy here. You got Van Ness earlier. The two of them with Aiden Hutchinson, you're going to wreck offensive lines this year in Detroit.
That's the way I was going. If I knew good defensive players were going in the first round, and if I was a real GM, that's what I would do. Load up at the defensive line. I think we got good linebackers. They just need help up front. This guy was still sitting here. I've read up a lot on him. I feel like he's been really talked about to be one of the best tackles in this defensive tackles in this draft. So why not add him to the list? Hey, with him, Bugs, Hutchison, and Ness, Kaminsky, like you said, we will be destroying offenses this season. I want to, and then just here's the stats. This year in college, he played 10 games in 2020. Averaged 1.5 sacks, came back in 21, averaged 7. His tackles, 27, 33, 31, 14, 17. His tackles for loss in 2022, 14.5, 2021, 3.1, 13.0. I'll take it. I want a defense. And with those two picks, I feel confident I gave us one hell of a defensive line.
Absolutely. And you're getting praise in the comments on Facebook, buddy, for your pick here. I know you were a little concerned about how your fellow Lions fans were going to take some of these, picks that you made because, the NFL Renegades is a Detroit Lions kind of centric, Facebook page. And, so I know you were a little concerned.
Yes.
But that leads us, hey, we're back to the Washington Commanders. Robert Planchet is going to pick for the Commanders here. And so with his selection, they talked about it. He moved down to get the offensive lineman, and I think they got the best one on the board in Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State.
Who did he
Paris has played both left tackle and right guard over the last 2 years. He allowed only 2 sacks in the last 2 years, and both of those were when he was playing right guard. At left tackle, no sacks. And so, I think they got themselves one of the best offensive linemen. Obviously, here, this is to help out the Washington line. They have needed to replace some people over the last couple of years. They've had some defectors. Of course, Trent Williams left several years ago to go to San Francisco, and they really hadn't replaced him up to this point. Now I think they have.
Yeah. Washington's that weird team. They need O-line. I'm not sure what they're really doing with their quarterback situation. But they're going all in. I mean, build that O-line and you might have a chance.
Yeah, I like what they have done here this offseason so far. I mean, they brought in Jacoby Brissett. I thought he was going to be like a bridge for a future upcoming, quarterback, but here they did not take a quarterback. They want to build their offensive and defensive lines. I talked to Robert, and he said that, if they get their offensive and defensive line solidified and they spend money on their weapons, then they can afford to go up in the draft or perhaps trade for somebody that they can bring in on a rookie contract, and reset the franchise so that they can be a winning, organization moving forward. So now we're back at the second pick for the Seattle Seahawks. Once again, this is Stephanie Freese-Sladek. Her and her son Liam are picking for Seattle, and they're going to be picking now at number 20. And with that 20th selection, the Seattle Seahawks select quarterback Will Levis from Kentucky. This was a surprise for me. I thought that they had set themselves up for the next few years with Geno Smith. And you know, she said, yes, they have. This gives Will Levis a chance to sit behind a veteran quarterback who's been through the ringer. He's got a couple of years left. He just signed a nice deal, but it sets them up for the long haul going forward at the quarterback position, Chris.
Yep. Not a bad pick because, I mean, Will Levis is a decent QB out of college. Needs a little work, needs a little grooming. You got what I know his name. Geno.
You got DK Metcalf, you got
you got Geno starting.
Tyler Lockett.
Yep. No, I know who they got on offense
last year, and Kenneth Walker III.
Exactly. I mean, I know who they got. I just couldn't think of Geno's name.
Sure.
For a minute. But you got Geno there. It's a perfect opportunity for him to sit behind him for a year or two, especially if Geno's still playing really good ball. And then it allows him to learn about it and then make the transition to the starting QB.
Right. And also, I mean, if you look at it like this, if Geno were to get injured, because he's a bit of an older player, you bring the youngster right in and throw him in there. You know, it's not like they're going to be throwing him to the Wolves. Seattle made the playoffs last year. They have decent players, you know, all around them. I think they've set themselves up for the long haul, but they've also set themselves up to succeed, you know, now.
Yeah. For sure.
And so that brings us to, we've got ourselves the Los Angeles Chargers on the clock. And, you know, the Los Angeles Chargers pick is being made by Doug something. I don't have it here. He's not a friend of mine, so it's on my phone. I want to make sure he gets credit. Hang on.
I got you. I got your messages right here. Bear with this friend.
Doug Beeltog. Okay, so Doug Beeltog's picking for the Los Angeles Chargers. And so, you know, I spoke to him just briefly. He's concerned about the health of, you know, Joey Bosa every year. They can't continue to keep a pass rush going because, you know, it seems like he's always injured. And so when I talked to him about what their pick was going to be, he wanted pass rush, and I think he's going to get it right here with the 21st overall selection. The Los Angeles Chargers take Nolan Smith from Georgia. And I think that no matter what, this guy here is going to pair well with, you know, the guys that they have on that team, whether they're healthy or not. You know, of course, they got Khalil Mack last year. If Bosa goes down, you know, you've got Nolan Smith here. And so between all of these guys, the AFC West better look out because the pass rush is coming in Los Angeles. I have here that his main attribute is quickness off the line. What do you think of this pick for Los Angeles, Chris?
I think it's a good pick. If you got, I mean, he's 100%. I mean, I think I would have went the same way. I don't really like the Bosa with the Chargers. I think he's at a point in his career for some reason. I think mentally this season it took a toe on him, and you could see it.
Right.
One of the last games I watched him play, I mean, I'm surprised he didn't get himself kicked out of the game, how he was reacting to the refs and the pouting and on the field. So if you're already having questions on health his mentality and how he's playing, why not go out here and get you another defensive end that's a good prospect that can come in and play right away, like Nolan Smith. The kid was a beast at college. I mean, obviously he's a rookie, got to develop, but give him this year, probably by next year, and he could be a household name by next year.
We got a comment on Facebook from Ron, and I was going to mention this and I forgot to. They're having trouble with Austin Eckler. And when I talked to Doug, I said, well, what about Bijan Robinson? And he said that he thinks that they're going to work things out with Austin Eckler. And if they don't, he doesn't see that drafting a running back in the first round has much advantages, because if you draft a running back in the first round, he's never going to get to his second contract because they're just going to want too much money, a la Ezekiel Elliott, and some of these other guys. Look at Derrick Henry. He got to his second contract. Tennessee's looking to trade him away, and he's one of their best weapons. And so I can see where they're coming from. Austin Eckler, I should say, was an undrafted free agent. So maybe they're thinking that they could find somebody, in one of the later rounds, or perhaps, in free agency to come in if they can't work something out with Austin Eckler. And knowing that, I thought this was about the point where we would see Bijan Robinson. Cincinnati got in contact with the Baltimore, guy. I was the go-between here, basically the commissioner of the draft, and Cincinnati tried to move up with Baltimore. Dallas has tried to move up with Baltimore. They're all trying to get ahead of Philadelphia. Philadelphia was thinking about, doing something here. And so Baltimore doesn't want to help Cincinnati out. And Baltimore feels like they can get the player that they want later on. And so while Baltimore's on the clock right now, they made a trade with the Dallas Cowboys. And I think it's pretty obvious that if they're making a trade with the Dallas Cowboys, that everybody knows who they're moving up to pick. And so with this selection, the Dallas Cowboys, represented by Mandy Brill Sauer, I should say, are going to select with the 23rd overall selection out of Texas. It's the running back, Bijan Robinson, to pair him with Tony Pollard. What do you think, Chris? This was a big stunner for me. I thought that, perhaps the Chargers would take him, knowing the trouble that they had. I understand why Cincinnati was trying to move up, because they've got, off the field troubles with Joe Mixon. They lost Samaje Perine to, the Denver Broncos. And so Robinson could have fit in Cincinnati nicely, but he goes here, stays in the state of Texas, and plays for the Dallas Cowboys.
Think it's a good pick.
I have for Bijan Robinson. He rushed for 1,575 yards this year and 18 touchdowns. He also had 19 catches for 314 yards out of the backfield. That's pretty darn good production any way you look at it.
Yeah. Him and Troy Pollard in the backfield, that's pretty scary if you ask me. That's not a bad pick. I'm really surprised he dropped this far, to be 100%. I thought he would honestly been a top 5 pick.
I don't know that that's going to happen in reality. I think a lot of people are saying that he is, like a top 10 player. Saquon was taken number 2 just, like 5 years ago or 4 years ago. But, I think that people do not have a premium on running backs anymore in the draft. The league has become quarterback centric so much that they feel like they can get good production with, a whole stable of running backs That way they don't get so worn out. You don't have to pay them that premium money. But, Dallas had their eye on this guy, and they just couldn't turn it away when the opportunity to trade up was available. And that brings us to the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings, I'm picking for the Vikings. And I'm going to tell you, I was really sad to see some of the players that we let go defensively. We had, Eric Kendricks left and went to the Chargers. And, the year prior, we've lost Anthony Barr over the last couple of years. We had to let go of, Patrick Peterson went to the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so for me, I just look at some of these players on defense, and I know we have a pretty good defensive group, but I just didn't like the way they were coordinated last year. And some of our offensive weapons have started to get a little bit older. We don't really have a big number 2 receiver to pair with Justin Jefferson. Adam Thielen was starting to lose a step. I'm sad to see him go to Carolina, but KJ Osborne ended up stepping up and becoming basically the second receiver, but he doesn't have the kind of speed that they need for a number 2 guy. And so that is why, with my selection here at number 23, I am taking the wide receiver out of USC, Jordan Addison. What do you think, Chris?
Another fast receiver to pair to Justin Jefferson. I don't see a bad pick here, because worst case scenario, even if you have to, you're gonna get him on a rookie deal for 5 years. You got him tied up, low cost. So even if this year don't work out for Minnesota like they plan, and then they have to, and say if they have to blow the team up next year to start a rebuild, you got 2 young receivers around built on the offensive line or on your offense to build around at that point. So, I mean, it's setting you up for the future at the worst case scenario, or it could help you turn things. Maybe it could help you boost your team right now. There is that chance. I just know Minnesota is still really tight on that cap, and I just feel that's where they're at in the position of that team. If they don't win, if they don't pull something out fast, they're going to have to blow it up and restart all over so they get some money.
Yeah, here's the information I have on Jordan Addison. Just going around, it turns out he only played at USC for 1 year. He was at Pittsburgh before he transferred, and when he was at Pittsburgh, he won the Biletnikoff Award for best wide receiver in the country. And he scored 29 touchdowns over the last 3 years. And I think that according to some of the scouts, reading the scouting report on Pro Football Focus, he has elite route running ability that helps him get the separation that he wants. And I think he'll pair really good with Justin Jefferson there in Minnesota. And that puts the Jacksonville Jaguars on the clock. What do you think about Jacksonville? They made the playoffs this last year.
I'm thinking their defense was pretty good. So they could either add to the defense or they're going to go offense. I'm not sure which way they could go on this side. It just depends on how they're feeling.
Well, when I talked to the guy that picked for them, which once again, I don't have that wrote down. When I talked to the guy that picked for him, he said that, the loss of Jawan Taylor at right tackle was a problem for them. Tim Isaacs is picking for Jacksonville. He said, the loss of Jawan Taylor to the Chiefs at offensive line was a problem for them. And that, he felt like they needed to bolster their offensive line. And so when I talked to him and I told him who was available, he got back to me after about 10 minutes. I guess he did a little bit of research, and he said, this guy here played both right and left tackle for the University of Tennessee. And so with the number 24th pick in our mock draft, Tim Isaacs and the Jacksonville Jaguars select Darnell Wright, the offensive tackle from Tennessee. So this guy here is going to replace Jawan Taylor, and he can move to right or left. So he is a versatile player. I have here that, he played very well, did not give up very many sacks at either location. And he's playing, in the SEC where you've got those big time pass rushers. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's a solid pick. I mean, he's not lying. You know what I'm saying? They definitely lost a good tackle, and they definitely needed to replace the tackle if they want to make it to the playoffs. This kid was a beast. I mean, Tennessee, until Hooker got hurt, was a very dominant team and had a chance to make the playoffs until, unfortunately, Hooker went down. So I have to say, this was a good pick. I know if I was a Jacksonville fan, I would not be mad by any means if they made this pick.
Just trying to get us all set up here for our next selection, which is going to be from the New York Giants and our buddy Brandon Biglin, who joined us on the podcast last week. And, when I talked to him, the first thing he said to me was wide receiver. And so, when it comes to the New York Giants, I feel like they did a really good job keeping all of their top receivers here this offseason. They kept, Shepard and Slayton and Hodgkins. They added Jamison Crowder, but he just needs more weapons around Daniel Jones. And so, in this instance, with the 25th overall selection, the New York Giants are going to select the wide receiver from Boston College, Zay Flowers. He had 78 catches last year for 1,077 yards and 12 touchdowns. So he was definitely he is a slot nightmare. When you put him in motion, he picks up speed and takes off from the line. And I think that if he joins up with the Giants here, with the other receivers that they have, this could be an opportunity. This guy could get mentored in the slot by Jamison Crowder and then take over for sure full-time going on next year. But, this guy here has a lot of speed, and I think it's going to be good for the New York Giants offense, Chris.
I have to agree with you. The Giants need a wideout. They got their quarterback. They're having problems with the running back. So to me, that's a good counter. Especially if you have a good draft and especially a good offense, you might be able to they might be able to get Barkley to maybe either agree to take a little bit less money so they can re-sign him, or maybe even get him to sign his franchise tag. Because I know right now, from out of the camp, they're saying that he's planning to sit out because he don't want to sign the tag. So why not get some weapons and just case for the worst case scenario on offense, or maybe St. Brown's going to sit back and be like, you know what, we got a team that maybe we can make a run. Maybe I should play and see what happens. You know what I mean? This kid they've been talking about him a lot. I watched a couple Boston games this past year. He was definitely their best receiver on the field, that's for sure.
So a big pickup at receiver here for the New York Giants, and that means that the Baltimore Ravens are back on the clock after making the trade with the Dallas Cowboys. I talked to Dontario Moore, who is our resident Baltimore Ravens fan about, what he wanted to do. Would he be willing to trade down, with the pick that he had? Because he had targeted himself a specific player. And I think that, he was really happy that he was there. Your face is super foggy, buddy. You might clean your webcam or something.
I know.
But with this pick, the 26th overall from the Dallas Cowboys, the Baltimore Ravens bolster their defense by taking the hometown kid, Deonte Banks, the cornerback from Maryland. And so here you've got a guy who played college in Maryland. He is from Baltimore. Got to be a dream come true for this kid to play for his hometown professional team. Banks is, he mirrors wide receivers according to scouts. He's all over them. So he is a press corner. And, Dontario said when he was making this pick that he was tired of Marcus Peters' act, and that he'd had enough of him. And, some of their corners were getting a little long in the tooth or a little full of themselves and were getting burned from time to time. And so, he thinks that bringing in this kid to play for his hometown team is going to be a big boost for them.
I think so too. I mean, other than the Lamar Jackson drama, Baltimore has made some pretty good picks in free agency. And right here, I like this pick. Lamar, they might be in trouble with the quarterback, but Lamar might be missing out on the best team he's had. So that's where I'm wondering by the time of the season, because they got OBJ this past week. They're building on that defense.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked, we've had a lot of discussions on our podcast about what they could do at quarterback. Of course, they got, I believe his name is Tyler Huntley, is the backup. He is, on the verge of signing his restricted free agent tender, and he is, he has played and played well, in Lamar's, absence over the, last couple of years when he's missed games. And I think that the addition of some weapons can only benefit him as well. And, with this, of course, we're just doing the first round of the draft here. But we've talked about it on our podcast that the new offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens is the former offensive coordinator, Todd Monken at Georgia. Stetson Bennett's going to be available at some point in this draft. He's going to know the offense. He'll have plenty of weapons around him. With a great defense and a good running game, you got the same thing here as they do in Houston, where you rely on your running game and your defense, and you turn the game over to somebody who has a lot of experience, not necessarily an elite player, but will know what to do and will get you on the brink of the playoffs, if not make it.
Yeah, Ron just said in the comments, speaking of Baltimore, they re-signed Huntley this week too.
That's good.
So they got a QB, and Huntley, he might be like a Ryan Tannehill, bridge QB, but he's not a bad QB, especially if he gets the whole season to play. They might be actually all right, to be 100% honest.
For the Buffalo Bills, who are now on the clock, our selector is my personal tire guy from Mario's Tire Shop in Wichita, Kansas, Matt Lowe. He's a huge Buffalo Bills fan, and every time I go into the shop there, he talks about his team and what are they going to be this year. And so with the 27th selection, the Buffalo Bills select cornerback Emmanuel Forbes out of Mississippi State. He thinks that they need more help on the back end. Of course, they did lose some players on defense in free agency. Most notably, one of their linebackers, I believe his name was Tremaine Edmonds. And so you've got him that's gone. And, Tre'Davious White has been hurt a lot over the last couple of years at corner. Forbes comes in. He's played against these SEC wide receivers. He's got a lot of experience. According to this, he's had 14 picks in 3 years. That is a lot of experience against the SEC. And I think this is a huge pick for Buffalo, Chris.
They definitely need it. I think it's a good pick. I mean, you said it right there, 14 picks in the last 2 years? And
14 interceptions in 3 years.
In 3 years?
Mississippi State.
It sounds like to me, I mean, with those numbers, that kid, it sounds like he shouldn't have a hard transition to the league. I think it's a good pick.
And that leads us to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Ron said another safe pick, especially with their losers and injuries, and I hope Hamilton is okay, but they need this. Well, Ron, they just said this past week that Hamilton has been cleared for all football activity.
Yep. And, so this brings us to Larry Black, who's going to be selecting for the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Cincinnati Bengals are on the clock. They have lost, they've lost some running backs. Mixon right now is a question mark because of his off-the-field trouble. Samaje Perine, went to the Denver Broncos. We talked about that before. But they lost both their starting safeties. Von Bell went to Carolina, and Jesse Bates, the second or third, I forget, he went to Atlanta. So their secondary is, in a little bit of turmoil here. I don't know if they had players that are coming up or if they like somebody at this particular part of the draft. But Larry had his eye on a guy up front who he thinks can be a wrecking ball for their team. He thinks they need more pass rush and more help on the defensive line. And so with the 28th pick in our mock draft here tonight, the Cincinnati Bengals select defensive lineman Brian Bresee from Clemson. And the information that I have on Brian Bresee is that he is a wrecking ball defensive tackle. He is explosive. Now, he's come back last year from an ACL tear and was just as dominant on the defensive line despite coming back from an injury. And so I think this is a good pick for Cincinnati. They need more pass rush. And if you could get to the quarterback quicker, that'll help keep your secondary from getting exposed, Chris.
I think it's a good pick. They definitely need help there on the defensive end. They got a good offense. You know what I'm saying? They got a great offense. Sorry, I messed up there, but they got a great offense. I feel like they're just missing that defense. They have a Super Bowl caliber team. They've been there once. I thought they should have probably went there again. But the defense is their only issue. I think this kid will help them. Maybe a couple more additions on defense and they'll be all right. I want to pay attention to see, this weekend and the real draft, if they're going, what they do with running back. I'm real interested in how that situation goes.
Yeah, like I said, they tried to trade up so they could pick up Bijan Robinson, and were unable to do that. The Chargers stood pat there so that they could get Nolan Smith. They tried to trade with Baltimore. Of course, Baltimore doesn't want to help them, but they're willing to get more picks, and so that's why they were able to trade with Dallas. Dallas gets probably the running back that Cincinnati coveted at that position. And instead, they got to turn to defense here, and they get Brissy with the 28th selection. And so that moves us now to the New Orleans Saints. Their pick is going to be made by Jason Borden. Jason Borden and I went to school together in Andover, Kansas, and he has lived for several years down in Louisiana. He just moved to Kansas City for job purposes. And I talked to him about the New Orleans Saints. I showed him who was available. And the thing that I felt like he was going to do is exactly what he did. They missed Teron Armstead a lot last year at offensive tackle. You know, he left to go to Miami. They didn't really replace him. And so with the 29th selection in our fan base mock draft, the New Orleans Saints select offensive lineman Broderick Jones from Georgia. And what I have here is that Broderick has played left tackle, you know, and he allowed 0 sacks in 470 pass attempts. And once again, that's in the SEC. These big-time pass rushers that are coming out that are both in this draft and in, you know, going to be in future drafts. He locked them up, allowed nobody to get to Stetson Bennett on his side of the ball, Chris.
I think it's a good pick. You got your quarterback in Derek Carr. You still got a decent wide receiver core. I think you need another running back. Or no, wait a minute. They got a rookie running back last year, so my bad. But you need an O-line to have a running game. Kamara, even though he didn't have a great season, but let's be honest, it didn't seem like he had much of a chance with that O-line. So hopefully this is a piece that helps build that O-line back. And I think this is definitely a good pick. And I think this kid can step in there day one and help them get that running game going again. You know?
Yeah, you know, and I think that Kamara was bothered a little bit last year by his, you know, off the field issues, and they're still ongoing from the Pro Bowl the previous year there in Las Vegas. You know, there's a possibility that he could be suspended. You know, they did pick up a young running back, but, you know, he did not get the kind of carries that him and Ingram were getting. And so maybe he'll see a lot more this year, but I expect them to really open up the offense, you know, passing this season now that they have Derek Carr at center. And so that brings us to the Philadelphia Eagles back on the clock. Tisha Warner. And, you know, we talked about the Eagles. The Eagles have lost so much defensively here in the offseason through free agency defections, people that they had to let go because of salary cap restraints. And so when I talked to Tisha about this selection, she told me she needed more help on the defense, obviously. And so with the 30th selection in our fan base mock draft, Tisha Warner and the Philadelphia Eagles select Will McDonald IV out of Iowa State.
Woo.
Will McDonald IV is, you know, of course, he's an edge rusher. You know, he had a lot of production in the Big 12, which we talked about earlier in the draft, is not known for its defense, but he wrecked a lot of offensive lines this year. And I think that with the other good players that they still have on that defensive front for the Philadelphia Eagles, they've added another weapon to attack the quarterback here. I think this is a good pick for the Eagles, Chris.
I think it was a great pick too. I remember, like you said, I remember hearing about this kid, and I feel like Iowa State is like that school. You know, they're in a smaller division, but you hear a lot when they're good. And they've been, the last 2 years, they've been that underdog team, and I've got some impressive wins. And one of the reasons why they've got some of those wins they've got is because of this kid right here. You know, this kid has been a beast. I think he can help the Eagles. And sometimes, you know, these kids come from these smaller schools. I believe, you know, this is a sense I like. I always love seeing when the Lions get that kid like Rodriguez. Speaking of that, Rodriguez, you know, we got him in the 6th round, linebacker. The other day, we were talking just amongst ourselves. We weren't live or nothing. And, you know, we're going through your book. And matter of fact, the book you read right now, it said Rodriguez was just a good special teams player. And that's basically all he was. Well, it turns out they were completely wrong because he was a complete starter. And I think he could have been a starter. But, you know, coming from these bigger schools, you have confidence. You got leverage, if that makes sense. So you're pretty much, you know, going in, if you're a high draft pick, you're guaranteed 5 years. You know, these kids come from the smaller schools. You know, it's not a cup of tea. I mean, he's going to be guaranteed because he's a first-round pick. But, you know, if he fell down the draft board a couple more rounds, he would have to play every day like it's his last day to make it on a team. And, you know, so I like good kids come from small schools because they always come in with the chip on their shoulder, ready to prove themselves. And they got themselves one hell of a defensive end there.
Well, and that brings us to our final pick, the Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs. And they've had, you know, some defections, you know, defensively. Of course, they lost Juju Smith-Schuster at wide receiver to the New England Patriots. You know, they're still yet to re-sign Jerick McKinnon at running back. You know, they're up in the air about what they're going to do, you know, maybe, you know, 5th-year option on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You know, but they did replace Orlando Brown Jr. with Jawan Taylor. At least that's, you know, what we believe is that he's going to switch from right tackle to left tackle. Last year, because of the trade for Tyreek Hill, they had 2 first-round picks, and they used them on defense. And they got, you know, furious George Karlaftis, you know, out of Purdue, and Trent McDuffie, the corner out of Washington. And so Stanley Palmer, my friend from school, is going to make the pick here for the Kansas City Chiefs at number 31. And with that selection, the Kansas City Chiefs, if I can make this work. The Kansas City Chiefs at number 31, and the reason there's not 32 is because, you know, the Dolphins had to forfeit their pick. They select edge rusher Myles Murphy out of Clemson. And so another pass rusher to get to those quarterbacks in the AFC. You know, we've talked about how stacked the AFC is here, this latter part of the, you know, all of these, you know, podcasts that we have been doing. And I just think that they're making a smart choice here, going with a defensive player to help the pass rush. They still have a very young secondary, and that secondary is going to be tested if, you know, they don't get to the quarterback. They had to let Frank Clark go, and, you know, they have other players that they have not yet re-signed. Carlos Dunlap was a rotational player for them on that line. Now, they replaced Frank Clark with Charles Omenihu from the San Francisco 49ers, younger, cheaper player. And here, you know, if they're adding to their rotation and they bring in Myles Murphy from Clemson, I think that is pretty smart on their part. The offense just keeps rolling in Kansas City. It's the defense that needs to continue to add pieces to be elite and continue to keep them in the Super Bowl hunt year after year.
I think this is a smart pick by the Kansas City Chiefs. We all know you need a defensive end rusher. We all know you guys are in a perfect position to pick rookies, get them on the cheap deals. You got a lot of veterans, a lot of style. From so day one, he got experience around him. All he has to go in there is concentrate on playing hard. And you guys got another star up and coming. As a
Well,
side,
buddy, let's go over the entire draft. We're here at the end now. You know, we did 31 picks. We're sorry about the technical difficulties between part 1 and part 2, but you know, we get back here to this particular graphic that I've got that'll show all of the picks for our fan base mock draft. I want to thank everybody again for joining in with us, tuning in to see what we did, and helping make these selections throughout the week as we worked on it together. And so, quick review of our mock draft coming up. With the number 1 pick, we had Bryce Young out of Alabama, went to Carolina. It was a surprise to us that we did not see C.J. Stroud go number 2. They decided to opt for defense, so Will Anderson Jr. went to the Houston Texans. C.J. Stroud went number 3 to Indianapolis after they traded up 1 spot with Arizona. The Cardinals opt for defense and go with Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher out of Texas Tech. With some red flags, the Seattle Seahawks had no qualms about taking Jalen Carter, the defensive lineman from Georgia. Chris took Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher out of Detroit, for Detroit out of Iowa. The Raiders are trying to set themselves up for the long haul at quarterback by picking Anthony Richardson out of Florida to come in and back up Jimmy Garoppolo. Bit of a reach here with Keanu Benton for the Atlanta Falcons. You know, played for Wisconsin there on the defensive line. The Chicago Bears strengthened their offensive line by picking up Peter Skoronski, the tackle from Northwestern. The Philadelphia Eagles take Joey Porter Jr. He's got the bloodlines in the NFL. I think he'll be a really great cornerback for the Eagles. They're out of Penn State. The Tennessee Titans took Quentin Johnston, the first wide receiver off the board out of TCU, while Jackson Smith-Njigba becomes the second first-round pick for the Houston Texans out of Ohio State. Green Bay traded for, with the New York Jets. They sent Aaron Rodgers to the Jets in our mock draft, and so the Packers picked Michael Mayer, the tight end out of Notre Dame. New England picks up the best corner on the board in Devin Witherspoon out of Illinois. Green Bay comes back and bolsters their secondary with Brian Branch, the safety out of Alabama. The tight end gets traded up for as Washington goes down and Tampa Bay comes up and picks up Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. Pittsburgh gets stronger on defense with Christian Gonzalez, the corner out of Oregon. At number 18, Kalijah Cansey, the defensive lineman from Pittsburgh, goes to the Detroit Lions. Washington gets the offensive lineman that they coveted in Paris Johnson Jr. out of Ohio State. And Seattle sets themselves up at quarterback for the long haul by picking Will Levis out of Kentucky. At number 21, Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia, will team with Joey Bosa with the Los Angeles Chargers to provide a really good pass rush in that AFC West. The Dallas Cowboys surprise and trade up with the Baltimore Ravens to select Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas. Minnesota selects Jordan Addison, the wide receiver out of USC, to team with Justin Jefferson. The Jacksonville Jaguars get a versatile tackle, and my thing is in the way, in Darnell Wright, the tackle out of Tennessee. New York Giants pick up wide receiver Zay Flowers from Boston College. Baltimore keeps a Maryland hometown boy with Deonte Banks at corner. The Buffalo Bills go with Emmanuel Forbes at cornerback from Mississippi State. The Cincinnati Bengals select Brian Bresee, the defensive lineman from Clemson. Broderick Jones solidifies the offensive line for the New Orleans Saints at number 29 out of Georgia. Will McDonald IV, the edge rusher from Iowa State, helps the NFC champion Philadelphia Eagles and the world champion Kansas City Chiefs select Miles Murphy, the edge rusher out of Clemson. So there is your mock draft right here on the 4th and Goal Sports Podcast. I'm David Llewellyn. That's Christopher Serra Jr. We do our news of the week every week right here on Sundays in the off season, 8 Eastern, 7 Central, NFL Renegades, Average Joe Sports, Football Unleashed, Exceptional Sports News, Pigskin People. We share all over Facebook. We're on Twitch and YouTube. I've had a great time showing this off, Chris. What do you think of the overall draft?
I think if the draft really went like this, Ron just took the words out of my mouth with his comment that the second day would even be funner with everybody who's still out there. Now, mind you, I'm going to lose my shit if the draft turns out like this for pick versus pick. That would be crazy.
No, but, I think that some of the picks will be right. I think, especially number one, originally they had CJ Stroud after his pro day. Everybody was saying he was going to go number one. And then reports start coming out that the mental acuity test, he had a hugely low, number. Some of the things that he said in the interviews were not, what it was that they wanted. And so Bryce Young has overtaken him. He's the odds-on favorite, with the Vegas odds, the betting public there, to be the number one pick for Carolina. I still think somehow, some way, CJ Stroud ends up in Indianapolis behind Gardner Minshew. I think there's going to be a lot of infighting and trading up to get to Bijan Robinson. I don't think he goes in the top 10. I think it'll be further down, but there's going to be a lot of teams interested. Philly's got their 2 picks. They could trade up if they want to. They've got, Dallas is going to be interested, but I'm not sure how much they're willing to trade up. Cincinnati, the Chargers, all of those teams really need a running back, right now. And so I thought that overall, everybody that participated did a really good job. They addressed needs that their teams had for the most part throughout the draft. Even if it was a reach, by Atlanta, they need help on their defensive line. This is a guy that Troy looked at and he liked, and he wanted to make sure that he got him. Yeah,
Troy's school is actually Wisconsin, so I will give him that. He knows best when it comes to them. He watches them all year, every year, so that's his school of choice. So I wasn't too shocked when he went Wisconsin. I had a lot of fun. I also appreciate everybody who helped us out. It was really fun and I'm sorry about causing the delay on Facebook earlier. That's totally on me. But it was a good recovery. I appreciate everybody coming back and finishing it with us. Great show again tonight. I can't wait for this season. This was our first big show of our broadcast to start the season, other than the free agency week. So I'm just excited because now it's the draft.
You think this was good? Wait till we break down the draft next Sunday night.
Yeah, it's gonna be a lot of homework all weekend again next weekend.
You're the one that's got to do the homework. I'm ready to go.
Hey, I'm ready to go. It's just what's working daily life, Hey,
I'm with you. But
I need to get a notepad so when I have great ideas, I can just write it down right then and there. and I won't forget nothing.
I'm looking forward to attending a draft party with my friends here in town, Mr. Johansson, his friends, Dean, and I forget the other guy's name, but the radio station usually holds a draft party where they hand out prizes and stuff, but because the draft is in Kansas City, they're taking their act to Kansas City. So we're just going to go to a cool sports bar, follow along, guess who we think's going to win, go in the first round. And then, of course, I'll follow the rest of it from home after that. But really looking forward to the draft this weekend.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be some surprises for sure, just like there was in our mock draft. And so I've enjoyed, being here on the podcast with you tonight. I want to thank everybody out there for joining us. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier. We'll try to get that straightened out for future podcasts. But until next time, buddy, this is Dave in Wichita, Kansas.
And this is Chris from Detroit. Also, real quick before I end this,
sure.
I'm looking into Tuesday to doing something, possibly. If not Tuesday, but mainly I'm working to see maybe, I know he's going to be at a party. I want to try to maybe see if I get a couple people that want to come on and I set TV up in here. And
for Thursday night during the draft?
Thursday night, it'd be more like a funner show with a couple of people on with me talking. And it'd be more just for fun, come in, hang out in the comments. I'll watch the draft kind of thing, you know what I mean? And then maybe if David wants to pop in here and there, if he gets a chance, it'd be pretty cool.
I'll give you reactions from the bar.
Sounds good. But if you guys haven't done already, go to type 4th&GOAL Sports and Facebook, go like and follow, click the bell, get our notifications. We're on YouTube, 4th&GOAL Sports. We're on Twitch, 4th&GOAL Sports. We're on Kick, 4th&GOAL Sports. We're even on Twitter. So we're always on live, but if you go and like our page, 4th&GOAL Sports, and turn on notifications every time we have a broadcast episode, post anything, you will get a notification, and we will keep you in the loop. Other than that, I hope everybody else enjoyed tonight. I know I had a blast. I was looking forward to this all week. I almost want to run it back and do another one. I had so much fun. But,
I had a hard time getting the first round set up by itself.
Yeah, and here it goes in the beginning. I totally forgot we were only doing the first round. I was telling people we're doing all 7.
No way.
We would have been here all night.
I can only imagine what a general manager goes through with his big board and, all the players and the scouts in his ear telling them who's better and who's not. I mean, when they had an interview with some of the GMs at the Combine and they talked about it, they said, some of these guys on our board have been on the board for 2 years. That's how far out they have to study these guys in an effort to try to make the right decisions, to not get a draft bust. Sometimes things just happen and you end up with one anyway. But hopefully all of our teams out there will make smart decisions, make their teams better, and we'll put them all in position to be winners over the next coming years.
Exactly. That's all you can hope for. I mean, let's just say you can watch tape over tape over tape of a player, and then you draft them, and then you find out it was just the system. That's the way these things go. So, that's why the draft to me becomes so fun, becomes really fun, because when you see those players actually become those players that you think when you get them is awesome. That's why me personally enjoyed the Lions season for the last 2 years, even though the first year was worse than last year. I still had fun those last 2 years because I watched the draft picks Brad Holm made become something. And that was the fun part, to know that okay, we got a GM that does great homework. He got great people around him, and he makes great picks. That's what makes the draft fun.
Well, buddy, we'll see you Thursday, and then I'll see you on Sunday.
All right, buddy. Sounds good. Everybody have a good night. We'll talk to you soon. Good night, guys.
Thanks for joining us.
Later.